Meet the ultimate loser MC. Thick adventure in another world, hot sidekicks, and cheat code level powers. Sounds like a dream, right? For him, it's just a cursory run, the kind of trash-tier content that won't let him skip. Dragged out of 1948 and dumped into a world where even slimes pull more than him, Dese's one true mission is finding the perfect spot to peace out. Too bad fate keeps cockblocking him. Monsters want him dead, and somehow he ends up on a pedestal. The story began on a night that started all romantic. Boy and girl, hand in hand, ready to take the ultimate plunge. Tied up, jumping into a river, swearing they'd be together forever. But fate had jokes. Out of nowhere, an unhinged truck came screaming through the forest and flattened them both like yesterday's trash. Sensei woke up expecting heaven, but instead found himself staring at a woman named Annette, who looked way too serious for someone breaking bad news. She hit him with the classic chosen hero speech, talking about bringing light to some doomed world. Sensei didn't care. He wasn't trying to be some savior, just a guy who wanted to check out with his girl. Annette thought she could light a fire under him, but he flipped the script by popping poison pills like they were breath mints. She cleaned up the mess, but he made it clear she was wasting her time. Annette kept pressing, talking about destiny and second chances, but Sensei wasn't buying the sales pitch. Then she dropped the real kicker. The truck that bodied him wasn't just some drunk driver's mistake. It was a damn cosmic reset button, scooping up life's rejects for a fresh start. Translation: the universe took one look at his life and decided to hit Control plus Alt plus Delete. That pissed him off. He didn't ask for a do-over. He wanted out, not a respawn. Annette shot back, saying she yanked him out of a dumpster fire existence. She gave up on the speech and went for the hard sell, his stats. The numbers were a joke. 1 hit point, poisoned. 0 skills. He was less chosen one and more one-hit wonder. Annette was scrambling like she misplaced her lotto ticket, hoping for a miracle in his stats. Nope, just a walking L. Done with the nonsense, Sensei turned to leave. That's when Annette cracked, admitting maybe, just maybe, he wasn't supposed to be here. That hit different. He laughed, saying it sounded just like real life, where being a mistake was just part of the package. Annette, looking like she swallowed a lemon, muttered an apology and begged him to stay. Sensei shrugged. This world was dangerous, but he wasn't looking to play hero. He was looking for a final resting place. That threw Annette for a loop. Most otherworlders showed up flexing like they owned the place, but he was different. Before leaving, she asked him to pick a profession at least. He smirked. Born a writer. Then he walked off. Annette, looking weirdly pleased, whispered that she had been waiting for him. Outside, the first problem hit. He couldn't read the signs. No cafes either. A voice in his head chimed in, handing him 5 experience points. Then bam, level 2. Then the world went to hell. A tree came crashing down, splitting the ground, and some girl's scream ripped through the mess. She was about to be Monster Chow and begged him to save her. Sensei, not impressed. He asked if he could write a novel about her instead. She kept screaming though, so he half-heartedly reached out, then stopped, mumbling that he couldn't do jack. The monster didn't wait, snatched him up like an appetizer. The girl, still panicking, shouted that the tree was sucking their life away. Sensei, completely unbothered, said it sounded like a solid exit plan. Then the tree exploded. Darkness ripped through the air and Sensei was somehow still standing. A voice announced he had done 300 damage just by existing while poisoned. The girl looked at him like he had just pulled off divine intervention, watching as the monster keeled over. Turns out, this dumbass had accidentally won by being so toxic even nature couldn't handle him. Level 3. She stared in awe, wondering if he was poisoning himself on purpose. He rolled his eyes. It wasn't heroics. Every time he tried to check out, the world kept throwing him back in. She thanked him, which was weird. He didn't do anything. Offered him shelter, too, but the mention of Sakin dragged him back into his own head. He ignored her. Only one goal mattered, finding Sakin and finishing what they started. Somewhere far off, Annette's side, sending up a half-hearted prayer for this dumbass's safety. When he came back, he had a smug grin and a cat girl hanging onto him. Annette stared like he had just robbed a pet store. Sensei, casual as ever, asked if she'd seen Sakin. No luck. The cat girl, full of herself, said not to worry. Their reunion was fate. They headed to Roth, but Annette got all huffy about them holding hands. Then she got even madder when the cat girl revealed that Sensei had saved her. Annette didn't like that one bit. Meanwhile, Sensei found what looked like a bed, but no, a coffin. He shrugged, told the girls to wake him in town, and called it a night. Annette flustered, muttered that he got the cat girl's name right. Then for some reason, she yanked him into the coffin, mumbling something about her duty as a clergyperson. Tama had it up to here with carrying the coffin and finally snapped, telling Sensei to walk like a normal person. No response. Worried the dude might actually be dead, Annette checked his stats. Just knocked out. They were close to the castle, so she begged Tama to hold on a little longer. Inside the coffin, Sensei dreamed of finding Sakin so they could clock out of life together. Reality had other plans. They rolled up to Roth, the castle town, and Annette and Tama popped open the coffin. Sensei, groggy and confused, realized he wasn't in his world anymore. Before he could process, Annette suggested they see the king. They ditched the coffin in the middle of the road and headed to the castle. King Thomas and his daughter Charlotte welcomed them, offering food and shelter. When asked about his life, Sensei struggled to think of anything remotely pleasant and settled on saying he liked the coffin. Annette, quick on her feet, buttered up Charlotte, only for the king to drop a twist. Charlotte was getting married. He wanted advice on picking a husband and summoned the lucky contestants, Warrior Gomes and Minstrel Otto. Thanks to the Demon Lord wrecking everything, monsters roamed the land like VIP guests. King Thomas, too old and tired to fight, came up with a genius idea: marry off Charlotte to a reliable musclehead or a musical child childhood friend. But Charlotte wasn't feeling either option. Instead of handling it himself, the king thought it'd be smart to let some random strangers make the call. When the decision moment hit, Sensei didn't hold back. He called out Thomas for being reckless, pointing out how brain dead it was to let outsiders decide Charlotte's future. If Thomas couldn't handle basic decision-making, what was he doing wearing a crown? The whole room went silent. Surprisingly, Thomas agreed, then casually dropped a nuke. Charlotte actually liked Sensei. That night, while everyone slept, Sensei stared out the window, lost in thought. Annette caught him and asked if he couldn't sleep. It was a usual thing. She tried digging deeper about Saction, but spotted something suspicious. A tail poking out from under Sensei's blanket. One yank later, Tama was exposed, curled up on his thighs like a smug little goblin. Annette's jealousy kicked into overdrive. Snuggling was her territory, not some freeloading cat girls. She grabbed a pillow and whacked Tama awake. Tama whined about being cold, flexing her cat instincts to claim the prime warmth spot. Annette wasn't buying it. The two squared up, escalating into a full-blown pillow war. Sensei dipped outside to escape the nonsense and found Charlotte chilling by the lake. She invited him to sit. He cracked a joke about wanting to sink into the water forever. Charlotte, caught off guard, asked if he actually wanted to die. Sensei dodged, saying her problems were bigger than his. Charlotte vented she wasn't into Gomes or Otto, and everyone expected her to pick one anyway. Sensei laughed it off, telling her to quit overthinking and just follow what she actually wanted. The next day, King Thomas summoned everyone for Charlotte's big decision. Annette bet on Gomes, Tama backed Otto, but Charlotte pulled a wild card. She grabbed Sensei's hand and said she wanted to dive into the lake with him. The room imploded. She explained that Otto sang for performance, not love, and Gomes, he just stank. When the king urged her to pick someone, Charlotte finally snapped. She called him out for pushing her into marriage without considering her feelings. Sensei, respecting her resolve, understood why she chose him. Before Sensei could respond, Gomes ripped off his helmet, revealing himself as a Dark Lord's lackey. The dude had been scheming to take over the kingdom, but Charlotte unintentionally exposed him. Sensei asked if she knew, but she just thought you reeked. Gomes, now busted, went full villain mode and threatened to kill them all. The guards rushed him and got bodied instantly. Tama, realizing Annette was still out cold, dragged her away just in time to dodge a collapsing pillar. With Annette down, Tama had to step up. At level 14, she could scrap, but Otto's music, just background noise. No buffs, no boosts, just vibes. Gomes lunged and Tama cracked him in the face, but it barely fazed him. He sent her flying and promised to tear her apart. Before he could, Sensei offered himself and Charlotte up first. Gomes, thinking Sensei was joking, agreed, and mentioned he'd destroy the kingdom after. Sensei didn't care. He'd be dead by then. Charlotte hesitated. Dying wasn't looking so good anymore. She admitted she wanted to live to protect the kingdom. Sensei, satisfied she found clarity, shoved her out of the way and took the hit. As Gomes went in for the kill, Annette snapped awake, throwing up a light shield just in time. She vowed never to let Sensei die while she was around. Gomes, running purely on brain cells borrowed from a brick, rammed his horns into the shield and left himself wide open. Tama wasted no time, launching him into the lake like a discarded boot. Relieved, Tama and Annette locked eyes, finally sharing a moment of mutual respect. Meanwhile, Otto was off in his own world, strumming away like a background NPC. Once the dust settled, Thomas rushed to Charlotte, guilt plastered across his face. He owned up to everything, admitting he failed as a king and father. He begged for her forgiveness. Charlotte, proving she was built different, forgave him but didn't stop there. She laid out her vision for the kingdom's future. She wanted to lead, to face the challenges ahead. Seeing her determination, Thomas knew it was time. He handed her the throne, crowning her queen at 16. As Otto kept playing his music like he was on a solo tour, Annette and Tama hauled Sensei's coffin toward their next stop. They chatted about Charlotte's gutsy move, actually managing to get along for more than 5 seconds. Right on cue, Sensei popped out of the coffin, smug as ever. He dropped some wisdom. The best part wasn't Charlotte becoming queen, but that she made her own damn choice and owned it. Dragging Sensei around for hours had Annette wiped out, so Tama finally told her to take a break. They stopped, and the first thing Sensei did after cracking open his coffin was ask if it was time to eat. Annette tossed him some bread, but he turned his nose up, wanting boiled tofu instead. No tofu, no deal. He'd just go back to sleep. After the break, Tama wanted to know how much longer until they reached the house. Annette said a few days, but first they had to stop by Zweiten Temple. Tama side-eyed her, asking why. Annette explained that people from other worlds usually popped up at one of 4 temples to fight the Dark Lord. But since Sensei was on a mission to find Saction, she figured the temples might hold some clues. If that didn't work out, they'd go somewhere else. Annette had already made up her mind to help Sensei, even though her old job was all about pushing people to fight the Dark Lord. Tama teased her for being all starry-eyed over Sensei, but Annette wasn't having it. Said the guy had given her a new purpose, so she was sticking with him. Tama threw a curveball, asking if she'd still help if Saction turned out to be Sensei's lover. Annette flinched, but still wanted to know the truth. Then Tama wondered if Annette could even step foot in the temple after quitting her job. Annette wasn't sweating it. She was tight with head honcho, and her familiar had already delivered her resignation. Right on cue, the thing came flying back, munching on Sensei's head. After patching up Sensei, Annette started ranting about her familiar, regretting ever trusting it with her resignation. Then, in a move straight out of a bad joke, the creature barfed up the letter, making it look like she straight up coasted her job. Sensei, staring at the disaster, figured the little menace needed a name. Melos it was. The creature seemed to like him, but he just sighed and climbed back into his coffin. Annette started stressing about her unemployment claim getting denied, but before she could spiral, Melos bolted, signaling trouble. A dragon came swooping down and Annette freaked. This wasn't in her skill set. Just as things were about to get nasty, a girl appeared, casually petted the beasts, and warned them to clear out before more monsters showed up. She mentioned one of her crew had died. Annette, trying to calm her, explained Sensei wasn't dead, just some otherworlder who liked napping in a coffin. When the girl realized Sensei was from another world, her whole vibe shifted. Turned out she was a dragon girl with a personal vendetta against otherworlders. No more talking, she went straight to blasting. Annette barely managed to block the attack, but the impact sent them flying. The sheer force of it made one thing clear: this girl wasn't playing around. As Annette tried to get up, the dragon girl slammed them back down, flexing her power. That's when Annette spotted it, the Dark Lord's mark on her neck. Before she could react, Sensei stepped in, throwing himself in the line of fire. The Dark Lord smirked, punched straight through his chest, and let him drop. Introducing herself as Waldelia, she wished him peace before walking away. But Sensei wasn't staying down. Laughing through the pain, he stood back up, recognizing the hate in her eyes because he once felt the same. Waldelia, suddenly spooked, called for a retreat. Sensei, on the other hand, finally collapsed. Melos, proving its worth for once, dragged them all to the temple. Isha, seeing Sensei's sorry state, rushed to Annette but tended to him first. She called for backup, and by the next day, Sensei was up, only to grab poison first thing in the morning. Annette thanked Isha for saving him and promised to return the favor. She then asked about Sakshan, but Isha had never heard of the name. Her guess, probably at another temple. Then she gave Annette a hard look, wondering why she was running around with an otherworlder. Most of them were bad news. She brought up Kotaro, who had abused his powers, flooding the world with gold and trying to bribe her. Annette defended Sensei, but Isha wasn't convinced, said he looked like trouble. Isha warned her to be careful, but Annette insisted Sensei had been a good influence. The argument might have held weight, except Sensei picked that exact moment to ask for money to buy drugs, and Annette handed it over without blinking. Isha started rethinking everything. She then asked about Sensei's gift, only to be shocked when she found out he had none. No special powers, nothing. Yet he had still protected Annette and Tama. Isha was even more unsettled when she mentioned that otherworlders had supposedly killed the Dark Lord. His blood had soaked the throne, and now some otherworlder sat in his place. Meanwhile, Dilly was out for revenge, swearing to avenge her father's death. Annette told Tama the Dark Lord had been killed a week ago, meaning peace might finally be coming to Zauberberg. But if that was true, then why had Sensei been brought here? He'd arrived around the same time as the Dark Lord's death. Something wasn't adding up. Sensei, trying to make sense of everything, started writing down the chaos he'd been through, only to rip up his notes in frustration. Annette asked if he had written about her, but Sensei admitted he hadn't. After meeting Waldelia, he was chasing something more exciting. Tama warned that she wasn't about to get dragged into something reckless. Annette, on the other hand, figured a little shopping spree might do them some good, especially if it meant grabbing some armor to keep Sensei from dying again. Suited up in heavy armor, Sensei actually seemed comfortable in it. Annette told him to stay put while they shopped. Meanwhile, Isha spotted him and immediately demanded a talk. She told him to cut ties with Annette, said sticking with him would ruin her life. Sensei just shrugged, saying it was Annette's choice, not hers. Isha wasn't buying into the whole otherworlder equals disaster thing without proof. But before she could argue more, a strange noise caught her attention. That's when she saw Kotaro dragging in another otherworlder, Suzuki. Suzuki, standing before the crowd, boldly declared the Dark Lord was dead. But instead of freedom, he corrected them, it was just a new boss. The otherworld was in charge now, and he expected everyone to bow. Then Kotaro, smug as ever, spotted Annette and called her out for hitting him with coins before. Suzuki, not missing a beat, stepped in, livid that Annette had dared to lay hands on an otherworlder. He warned her not to do it again. Got it. Here's a rougher, street-style version with more slang and attitude. Suzuki clocked a hand on Annette's head, and just like that, she went from bossy to blank-faced. Tama clocked something was off real quick and squared up with Kotaro, demanding answers. Dude just smirked, all smug, and spilled that anyone Suzuki touched turned into his personal puppet. Tama saw red, ready to lay hands on Kotaro till he made Suzuki undo it. But before she could even swing, Suzuki got her too. Isha finally rolled up, already mad as hell. She wasn't having it. She had trained Suzuki to use his powers for good, not this dictator nonsense. But Suzuki was long gone, drunk on power, acting like he was king of the world. He declared the town his new fortress and Yusha's church. That was his castle now. His goons went wild, trashing the place, and even mind-controlled Tama got in on it, taking her rage out on Sensei's armor. Sensei found it hilarious. Annette had really saved his ass making him wear it. Tama, throwing haymakers like a maniac, ended up cracking the armor so hard she knocked herself clean out. Sensei, now freed from the clunky metal, just stuffed her into a barrel to keep her from causing more chaos. Isha landed beside him, relieved he wasn't dead, but still convinced otherworlders like Suzuki were walking disasters. She pointed out that Suzuki had started out weak and quiet, but too much power had turned him into a straight-up monster. Something about that hit different for Sensei. He wanted to know where Suzuki was. Isha told him the church. He told her to watch Tama while he handled it. Isha thought he had lost his damn mind, fighting a hero with no special abilities. But Sensei wasn't there to fight. He was there to write. At the church, Isha stayed on high alert, but Sensei, cool as a damn cucumber. Before she could stop him, he chugged a whole bottle of poison. Isha assumed it was for the beasts, but nope, he drank it himself. She suggested sneaking in through the back, but Sensei Sensei wasn't about that life. He strolled right through the front door. Suzuki, expecting another ass-kisser, was all smug when Sensei said he wanted to write his story, until Sensei clarified he wasn't writing about a hero, he was writing about a power-drunk loser who let a little clout go to his head. That did it. Suzuki snapped, sicking his hellhounds on Sensei. Yusha jumped in, blasting lasers, but there were too many. Fireballs rained down, and just when it looked like Sensei was done for, a floating helmet tanked the hits and sent them flying back. It was Mellows, trolling low-level magic. Kotaro was losing it. Sensei had plot armor. Suzuki wasn't laughing though. He called his ultimate beast, Wolf, to handle things. The thing lunged at Sensei, bit down, and dropped dead. Yusha caught him quick. The poison. Kotaro, gone. Dip the second things looked bad. But Suzuki had one last card, Annette. He ordered her to finish them off. Annette, still under his control, charged at Yusha with a dagger. Yusha tried to dodge, but Sensei wasn't worried. He called out to Annette, telling her she wasn't a puppet. She fought against it, shaking until she did the wildest thing. She stabbed herself instead. The spell broke. She collapsed into Sensei's arms, free but bleeding out. Sensei passed her to Yusha, telling her to patch Annette up. Suzuki shook. If his control wasn't absolute, what was he? The panic set in. He looked for a knife. If he couldn't be king, he'd rather check out. But Sensei caught his wrist. Not yet. He wanted the real story. And Suzuki told it, a nobody. Bullied, weak. Then one day, boom, dragged into this world and handed god-tier powers. But power didn't fix his problems. Even when people called him a hero, he still felt like nothing. He tried playing villain, but even that felt hollow. He had no purpose and a real goal, just a bottomless hunger to matter. Sensei listened, eyes sharp, and then, like some cosmic joke, a magic circle formed. Yusha and Annette recognized it, a summoning circle. But this time, instead of calling someone in, it sent someone out. Suzuki vanished, sent straight back to Earth. Annette caught something on Sensei's status screen, a new skill. Yusha figured it out. Sensei wasn't just some random drop-in. He had a gift, all right. He was here to deal with otherworlders. With Suzuki gone, his creatures dipped, and the town finally exhaled. Tama, somehow crawling out of her barrel, was confused as hell, but didn't question it. Yusha decided Sensei deserved a reward and had a custom coffin made for him. Fitting. She warned Annette one last time about how dangerous this was gonna get, but she also respected her decision to stay. As they prepped to move on, Yusha asked Sensei what he thought about Suzuki's downfall. Was it because he was summoned? Sensei didn't have a clear answer. Suzuki's story wasn't over. He had a second chance back on Earth. What he did with it, that was his call. And back on Earth, we saw Suzuki again. No magic, no minions, just a dude trying to get his life together. Maybe this time he'd get it right. After Sensei and the crew bounced, Yusha hit up the church to report. Wolf was already knocking back drinks like it was his last day alive, complaining about smelly dwarves ruining his mood. Elton called out the blatant racism, but Wolf, ever the professional, half apologized before roasting Elton for being a goblin bishop. Elton clapped back so hard it had Wolf fuming. Cardinal Miller rolled in, shutting down the bickering. He introduced Arya, the new bishop replacing Annette. Arya barely settled, got grilled for missing the memo that Princess Charlotte had taken the throne. Wolf brushed off his report with some generic nonsense about dwarves, but Yusha dropped the real bomb. An otherworlder had turned Vale into a disaster zone. That was only half the problem. The bigger issue? The otherworlders themselves. The Pope, once buddy-buddy with them, now saw them as a threat after they took down the Dark Lord and claims Zauberberg for their utopia dream. The alliance with the church was crumbling and whispers of war were getting louder. Arya looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, but Yusha had a wild card, an otherworlder who could send invaders packing back to their world. Sensei might be the ace in the hole. Meanwhile, back in the Dark Lord's ex-territory, two otherworlders stuck around while the rest scattered to claim new turf. Over in Sensei's camp, Tama was hyped for an actual bed, but got a system notification. Her level had shot up to 17 just from hauling stuff. She wasn't thrilled about the grind XP, but whatever. Annette went looking for an inn, and a kid perched on a signpost offered directions, plus an expensive 40,000 Genico intro to a hero. Tama, with her bad history with otherworlders, wasn't buying it, but Annette, forever in Sensei's corner, forked over the cash. The kid misunderstood, thought Sensei's coffin needed guarding, and nearly jumped out of his skin when Sensei casually emerged from it. Stashing the cash, the kid promised an intro later that night. At the inn, Sensei already knew the comm was coming. The innkeeper confirmed Mirror, the so-called guide, was a known scammer who had never met a hero in his life. Annette took the L hard, and Tama tried to console her. Meanwhile, Mir lounged under a bridge, pleased with his earnings, until some shady figures snatched him up and dragged him to a shed, rifling through his stolen loot. Three goons had him trapped, but Mirror, master of bluffing, claimed the hero would swoop in to save him. They laughed in his face. Turns out they were heroes, the kind who made villains look like saints. The bowman, one of the scumbags, conjured a magic crossbow and decided Mirror needed a deadly lesson. Mirror, realizing his idols were actually trash, braced for the worst. Right as the arrow flew, Sensei crashed the party, casually redirecting it straight into another guy's knee. He called them out, but they weren't about to feel bad over some street rat. Then the appraiser of the group checked Sensei's stats. An otherworlder, poisoned and running on fumes. The bowman, thinking he had an easy kill, grinned. But Sensei, unfazed, dared him to aim for the heart. The scumbags weren't dumb. Sensing a trap, they dipped, leaving Sensei standing there, quietly disappointed that they hadn't finished him off. Mirror, still tied up, nervously asked if Sensei was a hero. Sensei didn't even entertain the thought, just a guy trying to survive in a world run by adults playing gods. He told Mirror to keep his innocence as long as he could before the otherworlders chewed it up and spat it out. Then he left Nur tied up like an afterthought. The next morning, Tama noticed how drained Sensei looked. Annette, suspicious about his midnight stroll, demanded answers. Sensei, as vague as ever, called it an eventful night. Annette, immediately spiraling, assumed he'd been with another woman and started mourning her non-existent love life. Before things got any weirder, Nur showed up, demanding they hurry. Tama, still salty about the scam, wanted her money back. Nur, shameless as ever, insisted he hadn't lied. He was the hero he promised. He just wasn't all that strong. The squad was minding their business when Sensei nearly retched at an announcement about Grun Castle. Nur caught the cringe, but the others shrugged it off. Tama dumped coffin duty on Nur, who grumbled but complied. They hit Grun City, only for Tama's big mouth to land them in chains. In a dungeon, Annette prayed to a deep sky, while Nur side-eyed Tama, suspecting royal theft. Sensei, hyped for his own execution, fantasized about stylish deaths. Nur Zero Loyalty picked the lock, setting off Annette while Sensei whined about losing his perfect send-off. Their racket brought the guards, who trussed them up tighter. Sensei still begged to be executed. The guards labeled him a freak. Dragged before King Siberian, the crew got slapped with a kidnapping charge. Tama, revealing herself as Princess Matilda, explained she had ditched the palace for martial arts training. Annette backed her up, slipping into formal mode before Tama told her to chill. The king agreed to free them if Tama dropped her reckless escapades. Begrudgingly, she bowed out. At a tavern, Nur inhaled food while Sensei, sulking over his lost execution, popped poison pills. Nur nearly choked learning Tama was a princess. Annette fretted over her casual tone. Fawn, a nosy waitress and ex-lady-in-waiting, pried for details. Sensei, forever in detective mode, pushed for more. Annette warned him to let sleeping pasts lie. Fawn, hit by nostalgia, spilled. Tama, meanwhile, pondered her crew's shock, except Sensei, who had all the emotional range of a rock, when a sudden collapse had the king glaring in a throne-hijacking menace. Enter K-Bara, the fallen angel of gluttony, eager for a demi-human feast. The king's thunder magic fizzled, his guards got devoured, and K-Bara, unimpressed, decided Matilda looked tastier. Back at the tavern, Fawn revealed Matilda's lost twin, Leon, once the kingdom's golden child. A storm stole him and the queen, breaking the king. Matilda, desperate to fill the void, chopped her hair and took up the blade. It only deepened the wound. At the castle, the king warned Matilda she was outmatched, but she charged like a fool. K-Bara nearly snapped her up, but the king lost an arm instead. Matilda, blinded by rage, lunged again, only for Briard to knock her out and run. K-Bara, tick the patient, shelved her for later and turned back to his meal. Briard crashed into the tavern, hauling an unconscious Matilda. Before the squad could react, K-Bara's announcement rattled the town he ruled now. No oppression, just a feast of demi-humans, women and kids first. One brave idiot swung at him. K-Bara grinned and added men to the menu. Sensei, seeing Tama's tragic potential, nudged her into the hero's seat. Briard and Fawn yelled at her to get a grip, but she was already halfway to the castle. Annette whispered about a secret weapon, while Sensei hiked up the gang. Briard, watching the mess, muttered praise for Matilda's unhinged friends. At the castle, Sensei fast-talked two ogres into letting them in, by convincing them they were walking meals. Later, locked up again, Annette prayed, Sensei stayed unbothered, and Mir got to work on the lock. Meanwhile, K-Bara heard about the weirdo demanding to be eaten. Tama stormed in. K-Bara licked his lips. Dinner had just arrived.